Hello, this is AstrologyNewsReport.com with your hosts, David Anton Savage and Ron Berger.
Now we go to our third segment of this week's report, People in the News, where we will analyze the Vedic Astrology birth chart of a newsworthy person, or place, or event.
This week we've decided to analyze the birth chart of Edward Snowden, the now infamous NSA subcontractor who fled to Russia after he revealed to the world the transgressions of the USA's Super Snoop agency.
We first took a look at his chart back in August when he pretty much became known worldwide.
This chart we are using is based on the birth time rectification we did back then.
Edward Snowden was born on June 21st, 1983 in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and we are using a 2:55 p.m. time as the hour of his birth. He went from obscurity to world renown in just a couple of short months back in the middle of last summer. Such a dramatic change has to show up in his astrology chart. Note that he entered his Mercury major period in 2012. Since Mercury rules Gemini, this activated his 10th house of status and renown. Then Jupiter, the planet of increase, transited into his 10th house at the end of May 2013. Jupiter immediately connected with his powerful 10th house Sun-Rahu-Mars conjunction, which assured that something big would happen in his life.
Now, the reason we are taking another look at his chart is in response to recent developments. First, Mr. Snowden is seeking to return to the USA. In response, the NSA official in charge of assessing the damage from the leaks said that, in his personal opinion, he would consider amnesty for Snowden. And then, NSA Director General Keith Alexander countered by saying that amnesty is out of the question.
We are going to use Vedic astrology to take a look at the key transits and planetary periods for Edward Snowden to see what his prospects are. Stay in Russia, go to Brazil, return to the USA.
Right away, I am struck by how powerfully karmic this period of his life is. A Saturn return plus a Sati Sati at the same time to start off with. Ron, this is quite a baseline to begin with. Before we even are getting into more specific details, what can you say about this combo?
Well, Sati Sati is the 7.5 years long period in which Saturn transits the house before your natal moon, the house of your natal moon, and the house after the natal moon. Although the specifics are different for everyone, Sati Sati is generally a serious time in one's life. And notice that right now, December 2013, Saturn is exactly conjunct Mr. Snowden's natal moon. So he is at the height of his Sati Sati. Now, a Saturn return is when the planet Saturn returns by transit to the position it held at the time of birth, something that happens for everyone every 28 years or so. This, too, is considered a challenging period, a time when major decisions have to be made. So Mr. Snowden began his Saturn return when Saturn entered Libra at the end of 2011, and since Saturn is conjunct the moon in his natal chart, this means he gets to experience both astrological patterns at the same time.
And who could doubt that Edward Snowden is in a phase of life with difficulties and challenges aplenty. Stuff that will not go away anytime soon. For further analysis, let's move on to his planetary periods. He recently started his Mercury major period. For Virgo rising, Mercury rules the first house of self and the 10th house of career and public activity. His Mercury is well placed in his natal 9th house of destiny and good fortune.
This makes sense for what is happening currently in his life. The 9th house is also the house of long-distance journeys, plenty of that for him, and events are directly affecting him on a personal level. And by activating his 10th house of deeds, Mercury turns on the issues concerning his career as well as actions in the public sphere. He began his Mercury sub-period, along with the Mercury major period, in February of 2012. In late July of 2014, he will move out of the Mercury-Mercury period and will go into a Ketu subperiod of Mercury. The subperiod planet turns on karma that is more immediately in your face. Natal Ketu occupies his fourth house, the house of home and comforts, and Ketu is the most unpredictable of all the planets. It represents the past karma, which can explode with a vengeance. Ketu, representing the unseen world, also tends towards dematerialization.
Yeah, it's one hell of a wild card. It's tough to look into that one, but this does sound like he's not returning to the USA anytime soon. But it could include leaving Russia for another country like Brazil. It should be noted as well that ever since his Saturn return began, Saturn has been aspecting his fourth house by way of its third house special aspect. Saturn's aspect has the quality of separation. Both the moon and the fourth house have some of the same significations. So with Saturn impacting his natal moon and the coming Ketu subperiod further lighting up fourth house issues like home, parents, mother, deep-seated feelings, while simultaneously getting pressure from Saturn, which represents delay, restriction, structure, and focus. For example, it will not be good times if one of his parents takes ill while he's in exile.
Yeah, it sounds like Mr. Snowden is in for a rough time no matter what, in the fourth house department at least. But we need to keep in mind that K2 periods and subperiods are the shortest of all the planets, and barely after a year of K2, he enters his Venus subperiod in late July of 2015, which will shift the energy quite a bit. He could have a positive outcome during that subperiod, which will run until 2018. Let's not forget that public opinion around the globe about what he did is hugely in his favor. Even many foreign governments have given him a thumbs up.
Yes, I agree. Venus is a very pivotal planet for Edward Snowden. It rules the ninth house of destiny, Taurus, where the Lord of the first, Mercury, is well placed. Venus also rules the second house of support, Libra, where Saturn and the Moon reside. Venus herself is in Cancer in the 11th house of gains, and as such, she forms a Paryavatna Yoga with the Moon. I have to believe that his Mercury-Venus period offers some good things. He just has to get through the uncertain times ahead with the upcoming K2 period. For one thing, I think he is likely to get married during his Mercury-Venus period.
Could be. But let's not forget to take a look at the transits in his chart. Transits can modify the results of the planetary periods. We have already looked at the Saturn transit. How much of an impact that is having is obvious, and he's not done with that until, well, almost the end of 2014.
On the plus side, Jupiter has been transiting his 10th, and when it moves into the 11th house in 2014, it will offer some benefic results, though not quite as much since it will no longer be in the major period ruler Mercury's sign. On the not-so-great side, he has Mars transiting in his first house. For a Virgo rising person, Mars gets an extra edge for potential mischief because it is the ruler of the 8th house as well as the 3rd house for the natal chart. Mars is the planet of energy and action. The downside of Mars, especially transiting in the ascendant, is that it makes you impatient, prone to hasty action, and therefore likely to make a mistake. This problem gets exacerbated when Mars is in its retrograde phase, which begins March 1st and continues until May 20th. Note that Mars, while in Virgo, will send its square aspect on to Mr. Snowden's 4th house, which is already going to be under pressure, and affect his new sub-period ruler K2 as well.
Okay, well, it sounds like you're onto something. Mr. Snowden definitely is not in for an easy time of it, at least in the short run. But at least in all of this, we're not seeing any evidence of incarceration or sudden departure from the mortal coil.
Yes, doubtless we will be hearing more reverberations from the world of the metadata Santa Claus, Mr. Snowden. We will return to his chart down the road.
Okay.